Kyle Busch does it again, wins his first pole since 2019, secures his first 3-win season since 2019, and let's not forget who won the championship in 2019. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove post-Gateway, a 300-mile race that ran nearly as long as the Coca-Cola 600. Frustrating lightning delays in the first half delayed the race nearly 2 hours, and then a couple of red flags late for lengthy cleanups, or in one case, track repair delayed the race even further. But eventually, at long last, we got all 240 plus laps at Gateway complete. We're gonna talk all about it. We'll discuss some of the top finishers. There are a few major storylines that I want to break down here tonight. But before we get too far off into the weeds, let's start with Kyle Busch, who joins William Byron as the only 3-time winner in the NASCAR Cup Series so far this year. Held onto that track position to win Stage 1. He had fresher tires than Ryan Blaney at the end of Stage 2, but ran out of time, wasn't able to run him down. But he hung around in Stage 3 and then put on a masterclass in the art of NASCAR restarts. There were 6 restarts in the final 60 laps of tonight's race, and in that first restart, Busch restarted 4th. He was the second car in that outside line. This was the decisive moment of the race. Kyle Busch used his momentum to push Kyle Larson, who was only on 2 tires, clear to the lead, and then Busch continued that momentum heading into turn 3, rode the outside, and was able to pass Larson for himself. He went from 4th to 1st on that restart, took control of the race, and then the final 5 restarts, he had to nail each and every one of them. Now, he was the control car. He had slightly better tires than Kyle Larson, who would restart next to him. But Larson has consistently been the fastest driver and team this year. They put up a fight. Kyle Busch's job was not easy. The Kyle and Kyle show once again did not disappoint. Respect to both Larson and Busch for racing hard, but clean and fairly. Busch held off Larson restart after restart after restart. Denny Hamlin actually took second on the final overtime restart. But at that point, Kyle Busch was long gone. Again, gets his 3rd win of the season. And yes, at the beginning, I did compare this to Kyle Busch's 2019 championship season. I'm not ready to say Kyle Busch is my championship pick, but championship 4? Yeah. Kyle Busch has to be a frontrunner at this point. This is the scariest version of Kyle Busch we have seen since 2019. I predicted 4 to 5 wins for Kyle Busch this year at the beginning of the season. He's threatening to beat that. Does not have the same consistent speed that William Byron and Kyle Larson have had, but Kyle Busch has entered the cagey veteran era of his NASCAR career. So whatever maybe small shortcomings his cars may have, Kyle Busch is talented enough often to overcome them. You look at the races Busch has won this year. He's won on a 2-mile intermediate, Auto Club Speedway. He won on a super speedway, Talladega, a place that had not typically been friendly to Kyle Busch in the past. And now he wins on a weird, flat 1.25 mile oval. 3 very different styles of racing. 3 wins, 3 trophies for Kyle Busch on the season. Congratulations to him and his crew chief, Randall Burnett, winning in St. Louis. To execute on each and every single one of those restarts down the stretch, easier said than done. Kyle Busch, once again, put on a masterclass. I hope young drivers in Xfinity and trucks and late models were taking notes. Before we look at the top finishers, I want to talk about the subplot of today's race. Like, the A plot, of course, is the battle for the win. Who's going to win this race? That's where all the focus is. But the B plot, in this case, was Corey LaJoie getting the nod to fill in for Chase Elliott, drive a Hendrick Motorsports car, and Carson Hocevar, 20-year-old Truck Series driver, making his Cup Series debut, filling in for Corey LaJoie in the Spire number 7. I was very excited to see how both drivers would perform. I'm a big fan of both drivers. Hocevar has done great things the couple of Xfinity starts he's made recently for Spire. 6th at Darlington, I think, 8th at Charlotte last week. He's moving through the ranks fast, and when he's avoiding controversy, typically his talent is on full display. And Corey LaJoie, stacking pennies for years, wrote that letter to Rick Hendrick a few years ago. Is in the middle of his best Cup Series season, statistically speaking, by far. Chevy rewards him with an awkward but still great opportunity. I was fascinated to see how these 2 drivers would do, and let's just say the B plot disappointed tonight. I'll start with Carson Hocevar, because for about, I don't know, I'll check my notes, 70, 80 laps, he was putting on a show. Started back in 26th, about what you'd expect, but moved forward quickly. And it's tough to pass at Gateway. He was making moves for 17th, for 16th. Carson Hocevar, 20 years old, never driven a Cup Series car. He's barely driven an Xfinity car, driving for Spire Motorsports, a team that is like 19th in points, not a front runner by any means, was running down and passing some very competitive race cars. And veteran Cup Series drivers, Carson Hocevar looked fantastic in the first half, or really the first third of today's race. But then it all went up in smoke when a brake rotor failed, broke, and Hocevar went into the outside wall hard, took his car to the garage. He was out. That wound up being the first of 4 brake failures tonight. Hocevar's team did radio to him that he had been using the brakes a little harder than most of his competitors, but they were surprised the brakes failed because they didn't see anything in the data that was outrageous. Young driver, not sure where the limits are, probably pushing a little too hard. Who knows? Wrecks out, but before that moment, Hocevar was putting on a show. Dale Jr. tweeted, "Hell of a job Carson Hocevar was doing. Stats won't show it, but got a lot of people's attention today." A lot of folks are wondering, with Josh Berry likely headed to Cup, could Carson Hocevar be a candidate for that number 8 Junior Motorsports ride? This tweet only fuels those rumors further. Great run though for Carson Hocevar until it came to a premature end. Corey LaJoie, on the other hand, and I'm going to attempt to be as nice or hopefully as fair as possible. This was a huge disappointment. Look, it's an awkward situation. He gets the call in the middle of the week, hey, you're gonna drive for Hendrick. Well, what? You're gonna fill in for Chase Elliott, the sport's most popular driver? Whoa, a lot of pressure on LaJoie, and maybe it got to him a little early. He grazed the wall in qualifying, and in the first lap of today's race, it sounded like he accidentally hit the kill switch when shifting gears. The pressure may have got to him a little, and if it did, I completely understand it. Also, Gateway, not one of Hendrick Motorsports' best tracks, or at least last year they didn't run very good here. The best finishing Hendrick car last year was 12th. So knowing that coming in, and then we found out early in the weekend that, hey, Hendrick's sim data was off, all the cars are struggling. Like, on the surface, this looked like an incredible opportunity for Corey LaJoie to drive a championship caliber car. But if we peek behind the curtains, yes, he's driving an elite car at said elite car's probably worst track. And on short notice, and with huge shoes to fill. I guess what I'm trying to say is that while, running 25th all day, which is what LaJoie did, isn't good at all and is certainly a disappointment, I don't think today's run significantly hurts Corey LaJoie's draft stock. Or at least, I don't think it should. We know Corey LaJoie can drive a race car. He's taken Spire Motorsports, who was nothing, backmarker equipment a few years ago, and honestly, if you look at that 77, they're still backmarkers today, and has put that team inside the top 20 in points coming into today. He's been steady, he's been consistent, and at times, he's looked like a legit top 10, top 15 contender. So we know Corey LaJoie can drive. Is he a bona fide future Cup Series star given the right opportunity? Maybe, maybe not. But we didn't know that before today, and I don't think we were going to find that out today either. Disappointing that he ran 25th all day and was never a factor for sure. Missed opportunity? Maybe. But I hope this doesn't hurt Corey LaJoie's draft stock. It's one race at arguably Hendrick's worst track. Kyle Larson was back there in 30th place with him in the first stage. Maybe y'all will think I'm being a little too nice to Corey LaJoie, but I don't think this one race should define Corey LaJoie's driving talent. I don't think it should. Anyway, okay, spent a lot of time on that. Let's talk about some of the top finishers. Denny Hamlin got a great jump on the final restart around the high side, was able to clear Kyle Larson, get second. Great run for Denny Hamlin. Joey Logano, last year's Gateway winner, gets kind of a quiet third place finish. He really didn't look like a contender all day. I know in stage 2, he took 2 tires, got a bunch of track position, and held on to actually get some stage points, so that was great. But Logano never jumped out at me as a legit contender for the win, but he comes home third. Kyle Larson gets fourth. He was on 2 tires those final 50-something laps. He was at a disadvantage battling Kyle Busch on each of those restarts, and once or twice, Larson almost cleared Busch for the lead. Again, they fired off 30th, worked on the car, made some passes on track, made some gains on pit road, played some strategy at the end, and they come home with the top 5. Cliff Daniels, Kyle Larson, the whole 5 team deserve a ton of credit. This was a solid championship caliber day, even though they didn't have winning speed, most likely. Removing equipment penalty for Truex put him behind the 8 ball early, but he battles back, put some fresh tires on late, drives to a top 5. I thought Ryan Blaney was the fastest car for the second week in a row around the midway point of this race, but pit road was an issue. And I know that's been kind of a common theme at times this year, but he lost a couple of spots here and there, crucial restarts. Once he got back in that 4th, 5th, 6th place dirty air, he was still competitive, he could still make some moves, but it was so hard to pass. Blaney went from looking like the best car to, one of the best cars. comes home 6th. Really great run for Daniel Suarez tonight, finishing 7th. We talked about it earlier this week. That 99 team has struggled to finish inside the top 10 since the first few weeks of this season. They'd fallen outside of the top 16 in points. This top 10 finish will help get some of those points back. I was also impressed because his teammate, Ross Chastain, who we're used to seeing run top 5, top 10, was really nowhere to be found, especially in the second half of tonight's race. Not sure if that had something to do with the incident Chastain was involved in the first half, or what. Maybe they had some other issue, but to see Daniel Suarez outperforming his teammate, I was impressed. Good job. Top 10 for William Byron. Hendrick as a team didn't seem to be all there. I mean, LaJoie, of course, was struggling. Larson early on was struggling. Bowman was like, 9th to 19th most of the race until he just broke on the final restart. Don't know what happened. Byron was the lone Hendrick driver who really start to finish tonight was top 5 or top 10. I know he faded on like the 3rd, 4th, 5th. One of those last restarts, he faded back to 15th. But once they got that ship righted, he started to inch his way back towards the front. Another top 10 for Byron. Michael McDowell. He was also on old tires there at the end, right in the middle of the Hornet's nest. Kyle Larson at least had the advantage of being on the front row. There's some clean air on that 5 car. McDowell was in the thick of it. Yet he battled, and he comes home with a top 10. Not to mention Michael McDowell got dumped early on in this race. Yes, we have to talk about it. Ross Chastain got into McDowell on a restart in stage 2. McDowell was on old tires then as well, spun the tires on the restart. That allowed Chastain to look to the inside, 3 wide bottom. But then it looked to me like Chastain, as soon as he got on those curbs, shot up the track a few feet into McDowell, spun the 34 car around. 34 team immediately came on the radio and said, I guess that's what they call getting Chastained. A few weeks ago, I said Ross Chastain is not going to get the benefit of the doubt, at least for a long time, so I can't give Ross the benefit of the doubt. Could Michael McDowell have given him a little more room? Yeah, maybe. But Chastain did enter really shallow and almost immediately came up off that bottom a few feet. I gotta put most of the blame on Ross. I'm glad it ultimately didn't cost Michael McDowell much. He rallied to still get a deserved top 10 finish, but in that moment, I'm sure he was frustrated because 1 year ago, this is where the infamous legend of Ross Chastain truly was born. The contact with Denny Hamlin, the back and forth on the track. This is where it all started, and 1 year later, Chastain is involved in another one, albeit perhaps a fairly minor incident. No harm, no foul. McDowell still got a deserving finish, but it had to be talked about. Kevin Harvick gets another top 10, once again carrying the banner for SHR. I mean, there are some of your top finishers. There are a few other drivers I do want to discuss, like Austin Cindric finishing 13th. What was he doing there towards the end when he just right rear hooked Austin Dillon up into Ricky Stenhouse? I can't speak to how Austin Dillon did all day. I think he was in the teens most of the day. Solid day, not too bad. But Ricky Stenhouse had a top 10 run going. Once again, more speed from that 47. They've been so good, only to get crashed by Austin Cindric. I guess just making a really bad mistake, just a misjudgment. I don't know, unless Austin Dillon comes out with some receipts and says, hey, no, we got together early in the race. Cindric was obviously mad at me, but maybe it was on purpose, suspension. Unless we get those receipts, I guess it was just a mistake, but it was a bad one. It's just like, you can't make that mistake. You're a Cup Series driver. You can't mess up that bad and cost 2 guys their day and potentially hurt somebody. I mean, they damaged the outside safer barrier. That's how solid that impact was. I know people in the comments are gonna say, Dillon came up. Yeah, he came up a tiny bit. Cindric obviously came down. He had room to his outside. It's on Cindric. He's at fault, and I wish Clint Boyer in the booth would not have been so quick to defend him or just pretend that he had no blame whatsoever. Even Michael Waltrip, you could hear, was taken a bit aback by Clint Boyer rushing to defend Ford driver Austin Cindric. Want to mention Brad Keselowski finishes 28th. I think they had engine issues, like they were down 1 or 2 cylinders all day long. Unfortunate for Keselowski. He and RFK have been really good lately, but this was just kind of a wash. I mentioned the brake failures. That cost Carson Hocevar, also cost Noah Gragson, who hit the outside wall very hard, driver's side first. Hope he's okay. But also the 2 2311 Toyotas had their races cut short. Tyler Reddick spun out on lap 2, but then rebounded, looked like a legit contender until he had a brake failure, put him in the wall. Bubba Wallace, late in the race, looking at perhaps a top 10 finish, also had the brakes go on him, so both 2311 cars out with similar failures. If I recall, last year at Gateway, I think we had maybe 1 or 2 brake incidents in this race. I mean, Gateway, again, is a very unique oval. Very long straightaways, you get up to really high speeds, only to have to mash the brakes because you have flat corners without much banking to catch you. Hard on the brakes and then off the brakes for a long stretch. it's an extreme track, I suppose, on brakes. So I'm not surprised failures would pop up here if they were going to pop up anywhere. But having 4 of them in one race, and that hit that Gregson took especially, that was a nasty hit. Something that maybe NASCAR or the teams could look at for future reference. Anyway, once again, those are your top 15 finishers. Congrats to Kyle Busch, 3rd win of the season. Let's wrap things up by putting this race on the Groovy gauge. This is a difficult race to score. I mean, there are so many elements of this race that frustrated me as a fan, between the nearly 2-hour-long lightning hold, which completely understand, but still sucks. Between the B plot of Hocevar and LaJoie kind of falling flat, I was really looking forward to seeing how those two would do, and by lap 80, it was not fun anymore. Then at the end, you had caution after caution after caution. Greg Galding, I didn't even know he was in this race. Stalling at pit exit, forces a caution. Red flag, red flag. The pacing of this race stunk, so there are elements of this race that as a fan, I just didn't like. On track, it's a flat oval. I mean, passing was difficult for sure, especially up front. 2 tires versus 4 tires didn't mean a whole lot. Like 2 tires, cars were certainly at a disadvantage, and after 10, 20 laps, they did start to fade for sure. And that's, I think, what led to a lot of the passing we did see up front. But overall, it wasn't an amazing race. It was similar to last year's Gateway race. It was fine. It was okay. Deserving winner though, I thought Kyle Busch, between that restart with like 57 to go where he got the lead and then holding off Larson, like at least watching Kyle Busch at the end, I felt like I was watching a master at work. Like I said, overall, I think I'm going to give this race a 60%, maybe slightly above average. Like, there weren't any glaring issues with this race, other than the red flags and the slow pacing towards the end, I suppose. On that note, want to wish the very best to the Eric Jones, the 43 team pit crew member who was taken to the hospital, was hit on pit road, or had whatever issue that was. Sounds like a very scary situation, but the latest reports Fox gave sounded promising, so I hope that crew member is okay. But back to the Groovy gauge, I guess I'm just going to go 60%. I don't really know what to score this one, quite honestly. My brain is a bit fried, in all honesty, but what kind of score would you give this race on your Groovy gauge? It was great to see a sellout crowd. Nearly every seat was filled, and I was worried about that considering the forecast had the temperature in like the mid-90s. I think with all the cloud cover, the actual air temperature was more in the 80s. I'm sure it was still hot, not super fun to be sitting there, especially out in the sun when that would pop out. But it was really cool to see so many fans at Gateway for the 2nd year in a row. That's cool. I think I've hit on everything I wanted to. Broadcast was fine. Fox only has 1 race left, Sonoma next week. I know there were those technical issues. Sounds like it was an issue at the track that affected not only Fox, but also MRN. Also affected like the Wi-Fi for either maybe the media or the teams or both. I mean, not great. This isn't the first time that Gateway's had electrical issues when NASCAR was there. Don't know what sort of infrastructure they have. I saw someone tweeted that it's like an AT&T fiber issue. If that's the case, boy, Xfinity, NASCAR Premier Partner, needs to jump on that. Great advertising opportunity. Oh, AT&T failed you? Well, get Xfinity. Woohoo. Something like that. I'm writing their commercial for them. I better not say anything bad about AT&T because that's the internet I have. I need AT&T to upload this video you're watching. Anyway, yeah, I guess that's going to do it. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up. Helps me out a ton. Also, if you're new to the channel, you love NASCAR, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any upcoming videos. And thank you to my Patreon supporters as well. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend, folks. I will see you again later this week. Lots to talk about before NASCAR heads west once again to race at Sonoma. West, sorry. Facing you. This is your west. I was pointing my west. West. California's over here somewhere. Yeah. See you guys soon. Have a good one.